Sarah, welcome to the Building Futures career conversation. I am so excited for you to be here because I am a real fan of your work and of civil and structural engineering in general. So for everybody who hasn't read your bio in the way that I have, can you give a little bit of a summary of yourself and your career?
Yeah, I'm feeling slightly intimidated by that opening statement. So I am, I'm a civil structural engineer. I am slightly in I think I'm at the best part of my career now. I've been practicing for quite some time. I started off in building, so I wasn't my background is my dad was a builder. I was bright as a child, but nobody in my family had gone to university, and I have to say I quite resented the idea. And I come from the west coast of Cumbria, so not the Lake District, but an area that's quite remote, and family were really dear to me. And all I knew was that I see people growing up around me, and you get to a certain age and you disappear. You have to go to university, you have to go to London and work and do things like that. I don't want to do any of that. Just out of interest, if I matter in this thing, I want to stay. I want to stay with you guys. Don't turn me into some experiment that I'm the member of the family who has to leave and go and get an education. So now I was probably about 6 or 7. No, I wasn't. I was in junior school when I was giving this speech, and carried on, went through school, did all of that stuff, got to my A-levels, got a major attack of hormones. When I was doing my A-levels, I was doing French geography, English literature, general studies. All of them really, really badly. I was told that I could be potentially a multilingual secretary.
Wow.
Secretary. It was back in the day. So I wasn't really interested in any of that. So I scraped through my A-levels, and my dad was like, and I'd been going on to site with him since I was 6 or 7. And my dad, you better, we'll just keep working then. So I spent 3 years working with my dad full time on site, doing the physical work. We were chatting about cement bags.
Yes.
So back in the day, age 18 or 19, my cement bags were the 40, 50 kilo ones. But I was so, I was determined. There was nothing that if the rest of the guys could do it, then I could do it. So I'd be on my shoulder doing whatever. And it was good. The age I am now and where I'm working, I look back on that. I only look back on it with fond memories. I learned so much. But 3 years out on site, and it was in the days of, I can't remember what the scheme was called, but I could have my own business. I could get government funding. Right. So me and the guy that I was working with my dad, we got our funding, we got our little business up and running. But about age 21, I think the hormones are subsiding a little bit, and I'm thinking, so what am I going to do? What am I actually going to do next? So I thought, I'll go and do, education. Here I am. I'm ready for you after all these years. I'm ready for you. So I went to Preston. Preston was a big city for me, if anybody knows where if you don't know where it is, look it up on a map.
I was born in Lancashire, so I know exactly where Preston is.
So to me, Preston was, right, I'm going to go and do a course for a year. It's an engineering conversion course. I'll go and do this course, see how it is. But ma'am, if I don't like it, I'm coming right back home. You can't tell me what to do, all right. I even remember when we went to the interview, I drove down in my jeans and changed into a skirt in the car park. I don't know why I did that. Why did I do that? Anyway, I went in. I'm going to do this. Why do you want to do engineering, Sarah? Well, I used to be good at maths, and I used to be good at those kind of things. Yeah, why did you do English and French? Well, I like them as well. Yeah. So, it's this straight away.
It's quite the system, isn't it? Yeah, choose 3.
Exactly. And what do you like? And when I was younger, I was equally good at everything. And by the time I got to 16 or 17, it was just, which one am I going to get through with the least amount of effort?
Love that.
So I started this foundation year, this engineering conversion thing, and it was to get me up to A-level standard in maths and the equivalent of physics, or bits of mechanics, bits of electronics. I literally had no clue what was going on, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I was completely addicted to it. I was doing the social life thing as well. Did really well in that, came out the end of it, and they were like, you're going to be a mechanical engineer? So, no, I'm not. I don't even like mechanical engineering. I want to be. I didn't even know what I wanted to be. I was like, I do buildings and things like that. I really like bridges, and I want to do something that is more aligned to everything I've been doing in my life. So they said, what about civil engineering? And I was like, what's the difference between building and civil engineering? Because you can imagine the careers advice I'd had.
Yes.
It wasn't it wasn't understanding me, it wasn't directing.
No. We've moved on.
So I was like, oh, okay then, what should I do? Oh, I'll do civil engineering. Then somebody said, Sarah, that's a vocational thing. So, because that's a vocational thing, you need to go to a polytechnic, not a university. Oh, is that all right then? All right, I'll do that. So in my mind, I'm kind of growing in my mind and growing in my courage to get further away from home hub. So
where was next?
So I go Preston. How far dare I go? So I went to Liverpool. Wonderful. And I did my civil engineering degree there, civil structural engineering. I also love structures. I really love structures. I like I like the. I feel safe doing maths and theoretical structural calculation kind of things. So I did that, got to the end of the degree and, right, okay, here we go world, here I am. Got my first class degree, got some prizes, got this and that. By this time I'd found out, I won't name them, found out about some of the top consultants. Hello everybody, here I am. Yes. Could I get a job? It was back in the milk ground days. I could not get a job to save my life. I'm not one that I wanted. I think that's the thing. The things I've always done are things that I've just done what I really love doing.
Yeah. And I wonder those organisations now, when you see the job you have now, it's like, okay. But it's also quite a good story for people who struggle to know at 16, 18 what they want to do. Yeah. And, sometimes the most interesting people you meet don't actually know at that age what they want to do. Yeah. And you're just a really amazing example who someone has become incredibly successsul. So you obviously have had an amazing career since these consultancies turned you down. So what did you do after that?
Well, I mean, and this is the reason I tell the story, because it was for me, it was quite a trial. And I went from being embarrassed. I went from being embarrassed of my background, embarrassed about what a crazy route I took to get to where I am. And then I thought, well, one, it's a little bit funny. But two, other people out there are probably facing the same challenges, thinking, that, there's a route set out. I don't know what my route is. And for me, it was never that. It was never that. So when I got to the end of my degree and I thought, right, I'm twigging this thing now. So I'm not taking some job that I'm not really interested in. I've never had any money in my entire life, so I might as well carry on for a few more years. And I thought, I'm going to do somebody said, Sarah, you could do a PhD. So my first response to that was, well, what's a PhD then? And another great piece of advice that somebody gave me was, Sarah, never show your ignorance. Never tell anybody that you didn't know what a PhD was. Well, here I am, everybody. I had no idea what a PhD was, and I am not ashamed in the slightest. So I was like, oh, what is that? Well, that sounds quite interesting, because I've got into this studying. I do like construction. I actually do like building things, and there was an opportunity to go and do a PhD at Birmingham University. So by this time, getting a bit more switched on, need to go to a Russell Group University. Yes. It's a PhD. And it's about, and this was really us really talking about sustainability. This PhD I wanted to do, it was about looking at existing structures and how do you make them last longer. The design's quite fascinating, but I thought it was, I was always quite into the investigatory side of things. So how does that thing stand up? How am I going to keep it standing up? So I went and did a PhD in, it was structures, it was reinforced concrete. How does reinforced concrete stay there for such a long time? It was the time that they were discovering issues with the Midland Links, all of the elevated roadways around Birmingham. So went and did my PhD and got to the end of the PhD, and the guy who's my professor, I learned so much from him. He was going off to be the president of the IStruct, and he said, "Do you fancy doing a bit of lecturing?" So this was a real, what's the saying? It is see one, do one, teach one. So I was like, ooh, that sounds like a bit of a challenge. I was a relatively mature student. I'd be late 20s, and I'm teaching structural engineering at the University of Birmingham. Oh my goodness, yeah. That was a baptism of fire. But like I said, I loved the theory. I like talking about it. I really like testing myself. Not to the extent some people do, but it was like I really like this, and I am a bit of a perfectionist, and I don't know whether it's a perfectionist because I am a bit like that and I just like doing things again and again, or is it a perfectionist because it's a fear of failure thing, so if you keep practicing it you haven't actually done it. But I just loved this idea. I thought, if I'm going to be a structural engineer, I'm going to be a brilliant structural engineer. I'm going to carry on doing my researchy stuff, which was basically making things and breaking things, which is a lot of fun, and then figuring out why they broke. So that was quite just good fun. Yeah. And then I'm going to learn all the theories and test myself, by trying to explain these theories to these really, really bright students who are going to basically annihilate me if I don't know what I'm talking about. So that was my plan, and that's what I did for not too many years, but it was my own DIY apprenticeship on the route to being at the time, I just wanted to be a great structural engineer. I always wanted to pass, if anybody's out there thinking about civil engineering, structural engineering, I call myself a civil structural engineer because I like the engineering of big civil structures. But I always had it in my mind that for the institution of structural engineers to get chartered, it's a one-day exam.
I know. I've seen a lot of people go through it. It's the ultimate, isn't it? It's a real kind of, you have to get through it. It's quite grueling, I think. Exactly. It's like the SAS, but for engineers. Just have to survive it.
So in my DIY apprenticeship, I was doing the stuff I was doing in academia, honing my skills, doing the research that I really loved. And I think that doing a PhD, it gave me a certain subject matter expertise, but it allowed me to really develop my thinking skills because I really like thinking. Sometimes I think, what are your hobbies? Thinking. Is that really a hobby? I don't know, but I really like doing it.
It's not doing any harm, so let's go that. I once heard one of the ex-governors of the Bank of England used to make his assistant put in time in his diary, thinking time. And isn't that a good idea? And you'd hope that people that are in the very, very senior positions do have the time to actually step back and think, because it's that real clear thinking that you know they're making the right decisions. So good habit, I'd say.
And it happens, that's the other thing, it happens when the old subconscious is ready.
Yes.
I have always struggled with fixed working hours. I remember when I finished, so I'd done my PhD, spent time in academia, which is it fitted with the kind of life I'd led before because I'd been self-employed. I've been a student, and then I'd been working. And doing a PhD is very hard. Working in academia is very hard. But I'd work late at the night, early in the morning. I don't know whether I'm actually a night person or a morning person. I'm a person that does things when the brain goes, hello, you've got that. Now go and do some work. And when I got my first proper job and they said, well, you start at 9 and finish at 5, I was genuinely like, really? No way, no. Really? And I never worked those hours. I always worked a lot longer hours, but I was like, how come you people in business who I've always aspired to be like haven't got it yet, that people's brains don't start at 9 and finish at 5? Yeah.
It's quite incredible. So what then got you into, because you said so what was this first job? Who took that chance on you? Because you've described how...
It was me taking the chance on them.
Right. I love that attitude, let's be clear. Because you said about the doors to consultancies had been closed to you, which I'm sure they're listening to this and weeping. But so who did you take a chance on?
So what I did eventually was, I got chartered as a structural engineer.
So you got through the 7-hour exam, etc.
I did. I got through the exam. I was like, okay, Williamson, I think your apprenticeship is finished now. Go get a job. And it was a funny time in my life. A couple of close friends died, and I'd always wanted to, since the age of 6 or whenever it was, I started moaning that I didn't want to leave home. I had this thing: why should I have to go to London to get a job that is the job that's going to be sufficiently stimulating? Why should I have to go to some big city? Why can't I go and do that kind of really high caliber work from where I want to live? I was ahead of my time. That was quite a long time ago. So I decided, I'm chartered now, so I want to go home for however long. And also I was really interested. I've always been quite interest-led, quite purpose-led, and where I come from is quite close to Sellafield, which has got huge decommissioning challenges. So I've done all my education on how do structures work, how do you keep structures, how do you extend the life of structures, which I think that's quite sustainable even in those days. And I thought, I'm really fit. I want to go home, and I think that I've got all the skills that decommissioning needs. I was probably a bit, I'm going to come and I'm going to sort it all out for you. But I thought, this really, all things are coming together for me, because I can go and work in this particular plant, sort out these challenges that they've got. I can be back with my family. I can be back in the place that I love. So I was like, okay, so I've got all that sorted. It's just, who am I going to go and work for? So I was like, hello, you really need to employ me, don't you?
So is that literally, that was your path?
Yeah.
Or you just kind of went to the HR department of Sellafield and like...
No, I worked for a consultant. I went to work for a consultant.
Who you knew?
Who I knew that that was one of their, Sellafield was one of their clients. And it was a brilliant time in my life. So, and we had a little strap line. I invented it, so I'm going to say it. I don't think it landed with lots of other people, but we called it head office work in a rural location. Yeah. So it was like, come and live in this beautiful location between the sea and the mountains, do this work that is really intellectually challenging and satisfying, and it's also making a great environmental contribution. So it was like win, win, win,
Good
win, win.
sell. Love that. It's like you're doing my job. That's amazing. Yeah. And so did you get people to come in?
We did. We built quite a good team there. Still stay in contact with a few of the people from that time, and it was a really, really great time. And then I'd been back home for 6 years. I think it was around about 6 years, and I got an opportunity to go and work in a different organisation, which it was, I wasn't particularly looking, but it was like, come and do something. I was kind of, when I finished working with my dad and the building side of things, it's like, yeah, that site stuff, you get really cold. You work really long hours, things, but then it's in my blood. So yeah, I'm ready for that. I'm ready for that kind of challenge again. And so I went to work for Laing O'Rourke, who is my employer now.
Fantastic.
And that was on the basis that I'd have a chance to do a bit of, it was working in a business that was working with constructors, working with designers, working with academia. So that got me to where.
And I was going to say, and what's the route then to where you are now? Because obviously you've got Hinkley Points and then you've got Sizewell C. Yeah. Was that directly after? Was there a path between those?
So it was interesting because I hate being pigeonholed. I run a business from age 18. I did my dad's accounts from before that. And I just happened to be, I loved the theory of what I'm doing, but I didn't want to be, you're just technical. Anyway, I saw when I went to do the role that I'm doing now, I saw the opportunity to be a bit broader, and I could just come out of the nuclear industry because I thought I'd do a bit of construction. And at the time, Laing O'Rourke were tendering for Hinkley Point C.
Yes.
And I wasn't sure what I thought about new build because I was really into the decommissioning challenge. Anyway, I got involved nearly 10 years ago now. I always joke about this. My colleagues were doing the Olympics and jobs like that, and I was fiddling around figuring out how to make reinforcement work on a power station.
Which is amazing. And what did you and what were your what was your thinking process from that point in your career to where you are now? What was that? Was it you wanted to stay within the industry? Was it
I was fascinated by the challenge of, again, what was really floating my boat at the time was the coming up through construction and working on construction sites, and this whole, I always enjoyed working with data. Well, I'm this mixture of theory and practical, and we're all a big mix, aren't we?
Yes.
We have to avoid being
absolutely
you're that.
Which would make it more interesting, I think, to a lot of people. Our industry, the more accepting and broad and we can be about people coming in, rather than pigeonholing. I think the more people would want to come in, actually, because it's actually an amazing industry to work in.
It is. And if I go backwards a minute, when I worked at Birmingham, we toyed a lot with ideas of get rid of the need for maths, physics, all the science A levels. And if you look at, I was the other way around. I set off more arty and then did the sciencey bit. And that creative side is so important. There's masses of what we do is about being able to communicate what we do. And you work with big teams. You've got to be a people person, or we don't all need to be people. But do you know what? There's that whole range of skills that we need in the industry, and it's not all about being able to do that hard science side of it. I think that's something that we really do that we still need to address. We talk about diversity and inclusion, and you go straight to gender, and then you go to the stuff that you can kind of see on the outside. And really, I think there's a lot to do to think about, well, how do we attract the different? And it's not just the normal things that we've now starting to think about neurodiversity. There's that whole range of, we've all got a degree of creativity with us. We've all got a degree of more hard technical within us, and I think we really need to focus on increasing that breadth.
Absolutely, to make it interesting for people to join.
Yeah, to make it interesting for people to join, and selfishly, it's more interesting to work with a really broad group of people. We need to. How do you get the best ideas? It's having different perspectives. having people who'll sit around the table and listen to those different perspectives. So I think at the minute in construction and engineering, we're aspiring to it, but we haven't quite yet figured out how to fill those seats around the table.
Absolutely, and I think you're absolutely right about how we broaden it in terms of that entry point, because kids, I mean, they still feel like kids, don't they, at 15, 16, when they're making choices on A-levels, they're having to go from 9 subjects, really quite narrowly sharp down to what, 3, 4 possibly, and that almost dictates what they're then able to choose at a degree. And I think it's going to be so inspiring to people that, for you made choices around your A-levels, and yet we're clearly, given that you ended up with a PhD in civil and structural engineering, more than capable actually of doing the maths element of it. But the more we make it interesting, I think, the more we'll attract people. So if you were kind of to pass on almost nuggets of wisdom, or I don't know, something about your career that you've always tried to do. I mean, I'm hearing at the moment that you've always been led by your passion, and you've always been led by that. Is that what you'd pass on in terms of if you were giving someone advice about how to be successful, highly successful? What would that look like?
I think it would be, I reflect on this because I think I've had not intentionally bad advice. I felt quite intimidated that I haven't been able to shoehorn myself into the advice that I've been given. Early in my career, I was told that I needed my CV to look a bit more structured, and my CV looked like the CV of exactly as you've just said, Gaelle, somebody who's doing what they're really passionate about, and it's passionate inside and sort of inside and outside of work. So I set off saying to my team when I went to work back in Cumbria, we're going to be technically brilliant, but we were more than technically brilliant. We had a shared vision and a shared passion about what we're doing, and I think we've got. If I reflect as well on my 20 years ago thinking about sustainability, the issues that people in the early stages of the career have got to think about now are a lot bigger and a lot more imminent than they were 20 years ago. And I think as I went through the whole thought processes of while I was trying to think about what does a structured career path look like? Should I be doing something that earns money? Should I be doing something that makes my parents proud? Should I be doing something that gives that to the people who didn't believe that I could do anything when I was in my council house and nobody in my family had ever been to university? And I always followed my heart. And I think that's the best thing I can say to anybody, that you follow your heart and then find people that you care for and care for you. And with that little work, I really believe in a work family as well. With that little work family, then together you're doing things you care about. You're trying to, I'll be talking about trying to turn the dial until the day that I really do turn the dial and shuffle off. We have to try and make some difference. So I think that genuinely is the best advice I can give. Just do what you believe in. Because
this is the thing and I feel the same way about the industry, the construction and property industry, is we make a difference to people's lives. We absolutely do. And in ways that possibly maybe people don't think about when they turn the tap on in the morning, and that's because the civil engineers make sure that clean water's come out of that tap. And when they get in their car, they drive down a road, a civil and structural engineer has done that. But not only that, there's been construction people that have built it and interacted, the homes we live in, the schools that we get educated in, all the way through to the offices that we work in, and the work that you're doing to give us renewable energy, all of this. And yet it's an industry that I think adds so much to society, and yet in a way we still struggle to get people to want to work in it, because it does make an impact.
It does. I mean, the projects that I'm working on now, so the Hinckley project and the Sizewell C project, and people have different views about it, but my own experience has been, and I'm determined that really when we come to Sizewell we'll build on the experience of Hinckley, seeing the opportunity that it's given people. It's just absolutely phenomenal. There are people who joined the team at HPC in the cleaning team, and now I've got really responsible management jobs, and that happened because we had a good team and people were talent spotted.
Great.
But
amazing.
And as a next step, we can do that in a structured way. We can do it in a structured way. One of my absolute passions is social mobility.
Yes.
And one of the things that I absolutely love about a construction site, but it breaks my heart as well, because you see people who could have been and done anything, but the cards just didn't fall that way for them. And I think if I can do, whether it's one person, 10 people, 100 people, if I can put something in place that gets the people, gives them the opportunity. You have to go up the steps yourself, but if I can go, there they are, or do something that contributes to those steps being made available to people.
So how have you created that then in the teams that you've worked in? How have you, because you just said, if I heard right, that a cleaner has now, is that what you were saying, has moved up into quite an important role. How do you capture that? How do you create an environment? So for people that were listening to this going, we need to do more of this, what does that look like? How do you bring it to life?
That, to be fair, was one of my, not one of my team who had, he runs a concrete batching plant. He's amazing, but he had this woman working in the team in the batching plant. She seems really bright. Have a chat. Well, would you want to have a go at this role? Do you want to have a go at that role? And it was just because you've got this big job that's bringing people in, and then you've got people in the team who also care, who've seen somebody who's, well, you've got more in you than that, and she ends up with this really responsible job. And there are a few stories like that on the HPC site, and they've happened because of, some of it's structured, but some of it's because people have just been talent spotted. We've got a great opportunity with these kind of projects to really, work comes to you, sort of. You go to areas where there are big pockets of deprivation, and people just not getting those opportunities. We can create them,
and that's exactly the environment, and that's what we want. We want people to feel that across the construction and property built environment, we actually want to welcome people, that it is a welcoming environment, because that's what's going to increase diversity of all types, because that's what we want. If I was to give you a magic wand and you could change one thing about the industry to get more people in, what would you do?
I honestly don't know whether it involves time travel, because if I could have got to the point of understanding what that magic wand is, I would be, if I knew what it was, I'd be waving it away and things would be changing. I think that what we need to do to change the industry is make sure that we get beyond the rhetoric. We have to get beyond just saying we need to change, and figure out what exactly are the steps that will change, that will really change the dial. And I think once we get so far, it'll become self-fulfilling almost. But it's taking those first steps to get to a point where people go, oh, it's okay to be me. It's okay to look to be in a senior position and look slightly bedraggled. It doesn't mean to say you're not effective at your job.
So so far as you look at your career, what would you say, was there one moment it all changed? Was it that moment when you got offered to go into Preston and to do the degree? Was it your lecturer encouraging you to lecture? Was there one moment, or has it just been a series of moments?
I think there have been a series of moments. And I've had a number of opportunities either made by me or made by others. So the point, and going to do a PhD was luck. That was luck that I thought, I'll give that a go. I think creating the opportunity, once I'd finished my apprenticeship, creating that opportunity to go and work in a consulting engineers, that was a big step for me. 3 years ago, I'm in the 4th year now, I was asked to be the programme director. So I've taken the route from, I was technical, and I think sometimes, this is just my perception, people are more comfortable that when they can go, you're in that technical box. I'd never want to be in the technical box. I want to be the leader. I want to be the full-on leader. And I was given the opportunity to go from being the technical director for work that's called main civils at Hinckley, to be the programme director for Sizewell. So I've gone from being responsible for getting the engineering and construction right to actually putting together a programme of work and doing it from a client side. So I'm putting together the programme of work, working with the organisations that will deliver to make sure that the scope's clearly understood, we know what we're doing to deliver. So my strapline is we're going to build a power station and do some good. And that step, I think that 3 years ago started to get me to a place where I'm thinking, this is where I wanted to be. So everything else that I've done before is right, okay, I'm doing that, I'm not quite there, no, I need to go further. Now I'm like, I feel like I'm in a position where this is my happy place. This is my happy place. I want to work to set up this project so that I can deliver for the organisation that will ultimately run the power station. I can do it in a way that the team who are doing the job have a great time, and I can do it in a way that when I look back and I go, you made a change there, you made your mark. So I think it was that 3 years ago point that gave me it got me to a place where I think, right, you're in a position now where if you don't make a difference here, Williamson, you've got nobody to blame except yourself.
I love that. I love that you're coaching yourself through your own career. You know, you don't need a career coach. You're kind of doing that to yourself. I guess a final question then is, you've made it very clear that purpose, values, the difference that you make is really important. So we've talked about the actual job that you're doing now, which has a massive impact on what we're trying to do, which is to reach net carbon zero. That's probably the biggest issue globally, from a society point of view, we've got to solve. How are we going to get to net carbon zero? You're playing, I mean, you really are. It's not like me just trying to drink, you know, more oat milk and recycle a bit more. You're actually really playing it. But what does really need to change for us to hit this 2050 target?
I think it's really, really multifaceted, actually. I think it's really multifaceted. So I've got the luxury of working on a mega project. For a project person, it is it's a luxury, and it's an honour, and it's a delight, and it's brilliant. But I think there's so much more to it than that. I think, you know, sometimes I feel like a little bit of a fraud being where I am in my career and my life, but I think that there's so much that we need to be thinking about. Mind you, I've got a 3-year-old niece, actually, and I'm really, really caring that I leave the planet in a better place for her. And not just the planet, the workplace and the environment. I think there are things that it's about changing the way that we live. I've made such massive differences to my lifestyle since COVID. I'm not going to change the world, but things like building a mega project's really exciting. But insulating our homes, managing the way that we use our energy, understanding how we can use renewables, understanding how we use our food. Food is such a massive thing. Now, I try to grow my food really, really unsuccessfully.
Yes, and I do too. So I feel that if you ever want to discuss how you can really fail at growing tomatoes, I'm here and available. And
so I think there's a whole mindset shift around how do we actually, and I find it quite ironic, actually. We're always going on about, we're systems thinkers and systems engineering. Well, hello everybody, the earth here is one massive system, so we need to understand the system that we live in. And I'm a massive fan of nature recovery. When I'm not doing construction at home, I do agriculture, as in I've got a little field that I'm trying to make sure that I get more biodiversity in it. But and on our construction site, this is another of my ambitions for Sizewell C. We're working with some organisations in Suffolk, and the idea is that you go on a construction site, it's quite a harsh environment. So you know what? That's bad for nature. It's bad for our people as well, because a bit of green around you is really good for your well-being. Yeah. So we need to try and find a way so that we can get construction and nature living in harmony. So that was a bit of a rambling answer to the question, but I think there are so many things that we need to think about and change the way that we approach. Now, I grew up, probably my formative years were really in the 80s. Some of the things that we did then, absolutely horrendous. You know, I'm so sorry everybody for the damage I caused, so sorry. And it's just trying to find a way to dial back from all of that. I don't think capitalism's going anytime soon. So how does the fact that we want to live, well, you know, look at where we're doing this interview now. How do you square the way that we want to live with the fact that we've got to live in a planet and support all of its ecosystems?
Thank you so much for coming in today, Sarah. I have been so inspired by what you've been talking about, but actually particularly for all the people that I know, certainly that I've met during the course of my career, who find themselves sometimes in their mid-20s, sometimes in their 30s or 40s, not knowing actually what career that they want, and to know and to hear about how successful you've been, where you are, and maybe you're certainly not a multilingual secretary, as someone might have suggested to you, but to know that actually there's always a chance to pivot, change, learn new skills, and it's never ever a point where you can't just learn a new skill and go into a new profession. And I hope that inspires more people to maybe think about a construction, anything to do with property, and anything to do with the sustainability of the planet. And I hope people listening to that have been inspired like I have.
Oh, thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.